Hello everyone! From the destroyed lands of Desolace, we move on over to Feralas, a glimpse of what Desolace used to look like. One area in particular that most people visit this place for, that is of course Dire Maul, which was once upon a time a proud highborn city called Eldre'Thalas. This was built thousands of years ago to house the Keldorai's arcane secrets. It was part of the massive Night Elf Empire ruled by Queen Azshara. The Highborn, led by Prince Eldre'Thalas, they were charged with storage and safekeeping of her most precious tomes, these so-called Shen'dralar, meaning those who remain hidden. They dutifully obeyed their queen. They journeyed into the misty heart of Kalimdor's southern jungles and established their grand city. But the queen would start to dream of a future in which Sargeras and the Legion would walk the world of Azeroth. With the use of the Well of Eternity, they made a massive gateway for the Legion to come in. But not everyone was down with being massacred by the demons. A resistance was formed and the portal was reversed, causing massive devastation to the land, the Sundering as they call it, as well as the destruction of the original well. Eldre'Thalas narrowly escaped this destruction. Only the efforts of Eldre'Thalas and his followers, that is what spared the city. Together, they wove a great spell to shield them from the destructive force of the Sundering. Although they had saved their city, the Shen'dralar soon discovered that they'd lost their fount of power. Without the Well of Eternity to draw on, Eldre'Thalas and his followers, they saw their immortality greatly diminished. Soon enough, they fell into a deep lethargy and languished in their isolated sanctuary. Not all was lost though. Eldre'Thalas came up with a brilliant plan to revitalize the Shen'dralar. He forged pylons in one of the damaged wings of Eldre'Thalas, constructing a prison to house a new source of power, a demon named Imoltar. To the shock of the other Shen'dralar, Eldre'Thalas summoned and bound a terrifying creature to siphon the demon's power and give it to his followers. Any objections they might have had were quickly settled once the other Shen'dralar experienced the demon's energies for themselves. Though dark and very volatile, Imoltar's power was invigorating and very addictive, more so than even the Well of Eternity had been. They reveled in their newfound source of power, but they also knew that keeping Imoltar in their midst, that was very dangerous. So it was that they developed a means to use the demon's power to keep it imprisoned. For thousands of years, all seemed well, yet the cost of keeping Imoltar restrained required more and more power. Nearly 9,000 years after the Sundering, the demon's prison started to cross a dangerous threshold. It began consuming so much energy that the Shen'dralar were left with none to siphon for themselves. Almost overnight, Eldre'Thalas' seemingly ingenious plan unraveled, and his access to the demon's magic was gone. Not only had the Shen'dralar lost their immortality once again, they'd also grown hopelessly addicted to the energies from Imoltar. Desperate to regain his power, Eldre'Thalas plotted with his closest allies and murdered the other Shen'dralar in cold blood. Their treacherous plan actually worked. Having thinned the population, the remaining elves could draw on Imoltar's power indefinitely. With the Shen'dralar's numbers diminished, Eldre'Thalas and his followers abandoned much of the once glorious city. The greater part of Eldre'Thalas fell into darkness and disrepair. Soon enough, other creatures from the surrounding jungles moved in to stake their claim to the crumbling elven refuge. Outside of the Grand City in Feralas, we would eventually see both the Horde and Alliance claim the land, with the outpost of Pheromone's Stronghold and Camp Moyachi. I probably butchered the name once again. Either way, both sides had the quest to go through, but the chronicles, they clarified that it was definitely the Horde who claimed out Dire Maul. Scarcely had the Horde settled the crisis in Desolace when a new source of darkness emerged. Deep within the southern forest of Feralas, ogre raiding parties were raising settlements and villages, as well as waylaying any travelers unfortunate enough to cross their path. Druids also sensed corruption and decay twist in the wilds. After a series of skirmishes throughout Feralas, the Horde learned that the source of both troubles was in Dire Maul, the name given to the ruined elven city once known as Eldre'Thalas. Almost 15 years earlier, an ogre leader known as Kordak had led his clan, the Korduni, to Dire Maul. Ogres are of course not native to Azeroth. Originally, they came from Draenor and they joined the Horde during their invasion. Not only had they survived the aftermath of the Second War, they had thrived. The Korduni had turned Dire Maul into a gladiatorial arena, which proved to be quite popular among the mercenaries and miscreants of the world. It was within this arena where King Varian Wrynn claimed victory in the Crimson Ring tournament. Together with Valera Sanguinar and Brawl Baremantle, he became a crowd favorite and earned himself the title of Lo'Gush. This means Ghost Wolf, and as we know, that title would be taken even further as he would become the embodiment of Goldrin himself. Now Gordrak had always been a cruel and ruthless leader, but terrible whispers now plagued his mind, urging him to madness and slaughter. He had commanded his clan to indiscriminately murder anyone that they could find. The Horde quickly dispatched his forces to scour the Gorduni from Dire Maul. They had expected only to kill Gordrak and end his reign of madness, but once they arrived, they discovered two different sources of corruption lurking within the city. One source that came from the Shen'dralar, which shocked those who explored Dire Maul. Their presence, it did not raise alarms at first, for they did not seem hostile. Yet when the Horde discovered that the elves had imprisoned the demon Imoltar and were feeding on his power, there was no choice but to act. The Horde banished Imoltar to the Twisting Nether. In doing so, they cut off the elves of their source of power and incurred their wrath. The Shen'dralar's leader, Prince Eldre'Thalas, personally led the counterattack against the Horde, but he could not restore Imoltar or claim his vengeance. He fell to the Horde's blades, and Dire Maul would become his tomb. The remaining elves then fled Dire Maul for good. They would spend years wandering the wilds, trying to rid themselves of demonic power and feel whole again. Their journey would eventually lead them to reconnect with the Night Elves and rejoin their society, bringing magic back to the elves. The other source of corruption, that came from the Emerald Nightmare, the corruption of the Emerald Dream caused by the Old Gods. The dark energy of the Old Gods had slipped past the Emerald Dream borders and manifested in the physical world. It was this power that had driven Gordrak to insanity, and the Horde's champions knew that eradicating it was the only way to spare Feralas. This part of Dire Maul, known as Dire Maul North, is probably my favorite part because of the whole tribute run that you can do. You got the option to do special things. You could gather special materials to create a suit, to make a trap, open up doors. You can skip all the bosses except for Gordrak at the end to receive bonus loot when you win. Of course, that was completely optional. You could also just murder all the ogres in your path and still proclaim yourself as King of Dire Maul. Then the West Wing, that's the one that contains the Shen'dralar, as well as the spirits needed to be freed for the special Paladin Mount quests. The last wing, the East one, that contains mainly magic abusers and the victims as such, with the satyr Elves in the Wild Shaper as its end boss. He seeks nothing less than the total corruption of Feralas, but until he discovered the shrine of Eldre'Thalas within Dire Maul, he had little success. With the power of enslaved ancients at his command, Elzin concentrated the vitality of the surrounding forest into his lair, allowing him to manipulate it at will. Now the Emerald Nightmare, that did not only whisper to Gordrak, we also saw dominate the land with 4 different world bosses, known as the Dragons of Nightmare. Once great defenders of the Emerald Dream, now they fall into darkness. There was Lafon, Emeris, Terrar and Ysandra. Heroes of the world, they quickly rallied together to take on these great beasts, but their connection to the dream, to the Emerald Nightmare, made it rather difficult to get rid of them. Lafon and Emeris, they were killed during the war against the Nightmare, as described within the novel Stormrage. Terrar is still very much under the control of the darkness, while Ysandra, she seems to have liberated herself. After the Cataclysm, we uncover that the wilds in Feralas are still corrupted, and although we do our best to get rid of it at the roots, it just doesn't seem to go away. We even use Ysandra's tear to seal off the portal into the dream at Dreambow, a great tree that was once upon a time planted by Fendrel Stackhelm from one of Nordrassil's branches, but Ysandra ultimately has to face her nightmare and needs our aid to do so. Together we stand at the Emerald Summit. She can hide from this no longer. All she did while being a part of that brood, all that suffering she's caused, it must be repaid today. While still weak and unable to assume her true form, with the risk of being taken by the Nightmare once again, she still summons Terrar, taunts him to face us. The Dragon of Nightmare does, and together we bring him low. With that, she is the only one left. Even if she would choose to remain in this world, she cannot rejoin the Green Flight. The touch of Nightmare is not so easily forgotten, but the victory, it gives her hope. Perhaps in time she can find peace in a simple life amongst mortals. Sadly, that would not be Ysandra's fate. As with Legion, we uncover that the Nightmare truly did take it again. Perhaps now that we defeated it once more, perhaps now it will be permanently gone, and she will no longer have to fear the dream.
Oh, Ysandra, how cruel fate can be.
Yet the Nightmare is not the only connection to the Old Gods that we can find in Feralas. We also have the Silithid. The insectoids are connected to the Old God Kafun, explained as far back as Classic, since the people at Feathermoon Stronghold lost sight of their messenger boy and they asked us to track him down. The search gets us in conflict with the Woodpaw Gnolls. They had stolen his gear, the information that he was carrying, but a scribbled note inside his backpack, it gave us a clue. It told us that he discovered insidious bug-like creatures south of the Gnoll camps in a place called the Riving Deep. The offer felt the need to investigate it personally, as though it was a serious threat to all of Feralas. The notice signed by Story of Feralas, our missing guy, which we save from a cocoon, while also taking out a whole bunch of the bugs. A small taste of what was to come, as during the Ahn'Qiraj War, loading the Scarab Wall and assaulting Ahn'Qiraj, Kut'Fum forces would actually invade Feralas. Of course, heroes still went into Ahn'Qiraj and actually managed to defeat the old god, but that didn't stop his minions from causing trouble, even after the Cataclysm. The Gnolls would find themselves in conflict, not only with the Alliance and the Horde, but also against the Silithid. Once more, champions went out to reduce the bug numbers, making the land just a little bit safer.
You are already dead.
I mentioned a couple of times now the difference between Classic and the Cataclysm. As Deathwing breaking out of the world, it changed the land quite a bit, and the original quest received a revamp. From studying the map, we can see that the Isle of Dread has now sunk beneath the waves. This isle was mainly used for the Scepter of the Shifting Sands questline, which was used to open up the gates of Ahn'Qiraj. The Chimera that lived on the island, they're gone, most likely dead, since the only remaining Chimerok is Prince Lakma, presumably the child of Lord Lochmaron, a rare mob that you can find in the mountain range between Silithid and Feralas, who bears the title Last of the Chimerok. Feramun's stronghold is now called Ruins of Feramun. The Cataclysm, it did a whole bunch of damage to it, while the Hate Crest Naga finished the job and forced most of the troops to move further inland. There, they built a new Feramun stronghold, named after Shandris Feramun, leader of the Alliance forces in the area. Shandris is the adopted daughter of Malfurion and Tyrande, general of the Sentinels, and one badass that deserves a full story dedicated to her, but I didn't want to mention, like, this is Shandris. The Horde's main base of operations, they can be found at Stonemaul, where Orhan Ogreblade is leading the troops. It was during Warcraft 3, where we saw Rexxar claim leadership over the Stonemaul Ogres, and she has called them here to do the heavy lifting against the Guduni clan. They also have a Tauren village, the Camp Moyachi that I mentioned, that's dealing with refugees flooding in from Thousand Needles. The Cataclysm was not kind to that area, not to mention the Grim Totem Tauren. They've always been hostile, and even more so after the leader Magatha got her ass kicked while trying to take over from Cairn and use Garrosh to achieve her goals. The war chief of the Horde was not happy with being deceived by her. She actually expected him to support her coup, but instead, he left it to her fate. And Cairn's son, Baine Bloodhoof, he retook Thunderbluff and exiled the Crone together with anyone that remained at her side. A smaller Tauren settlement is called Camp Ataya, that's been added to the north, with the Druids of the Talon counterpart being at Dreamer's Rest. It was there where Thrall was once upon a time asked by Ysera to go to this camp to help them deal with the elemental unrest. A task that seemed small to Thrall at first. He couldn't tell if it was a trap or a test, but he went there all the same and he did what he could. The moment he arrived, the resentment and irritation at the task Ysera had given him, it melted away. These people, these druids, were in trouble and they needed his help. And for whatever reason the Green Dragon aspect had, she'd wanted him to be the one to help them. And so, Thrall did the smallest step on his journey to become Go'el, to help save the world itself and become the Uber Shaman that we saw at the end of the Cataclysm.
The Cataclysm is over.
The ruins of Ysildon are now marked in the High Wilderness. Ysildon used to be a large Night Elf city, but after the Sundering, only ruins remain. There's actually a pretty cool questline that plays out here. You're either sent because of visions or to find a missing apprentice. Either way, you get in contact with the spirit of Sensiria. She tells us that she's chained to this place. She can barely hold her form to talk to us. She desperately needs our aid to leave the tomb. So the heroes that we are, we collect glowing soil and soul essences, after which it's time to summon the evil overlord that keeps her bound here. Verinius the Twisted, a foul, twisted demon who's been devouring souls for millennia. He's summoned and slain, but as he takes his final breath, we can see a little glimpse of the past, echoes right in front of us. It was 10,000 years ago, where Verinius realized what their queen was doing, and he wanted to flee with Davramar Sunstrider. Together with his beloved, they could join the resistance and stand up against the Jara, stand up against the demons. But it was already too late. His beloved had already fallen to corruption, transformed into a succubus, and poor Verinius is transformed into a demon. Even after she gifted him that new form, he insisted on keeping her trapped. He even hoarded all the souls just so that she couldn't have any. But now, with our aid, she is free. She definitely owes us a favor. Someday she'll repay it. Sadly, not even the return of the Legion was enough to make an appearance, so who knows where Sensiria is right now. A more immediate threat would once again be Old God related, as Deathwing was in league with them and he recruited powerful foes to bring about the Hour of Twilight. This is the moment in which the Old Gods will break out of the prison and rule the world once more. foes like Ragnaros the Fire Lord, Elakir the Wind Lord, but also the Twilight Hammer led by the ogre Cho'gall. The Gordunian Feralas have gotten their hands on a Gorduni orb. There's no way that the Gorduni made these themselves. Someone is supplying them. Someone is giving them gifts of power, and we need to find out who. To do so, we capture a Gordok ogre mage, who, after a bit of motivating, spills the beans and informs us that it's Cho'gall and the Twilight's Hammer who's been busy recruiting the ogres at Dire Maul, as well as gaining access to the remnants of Eldre'Thalas, full of forbidden powers.
Behold! The world you see before you has been judged. Fire, water, earth, air! All shall perish before the elements. Burn and drown and crush and suffocate. Join us and embrace the inevitable end. The Master's power calls. You will be reborn, stronger than flesh. Strength beyond form, power in the infinite. Swear your allegiance to me. The Master wants, he sees and wants and hungers. And you will be remade in my image. Wait! Infidel! A heathen among us! An intruder! You! Show yourselves, my ogres! Slay this insect! Blood for the Master! Blood and suffering!
We fight with Cho'gall's disciples, Moltar the Burning and Gluck the Quenched, Water and Fire, but they're no match for us, so Cho'gall decides to come down himself.
Enough! I'll stain my hands with your blood! Murder! Murder!
Placed in a block of ice, we're helpless and unable to stop Cho'gall from casting his flaming Pillar of Doom, but thankfully, Chandris Pheromone on the Alliance side, or Orhan Ogreblade for the Hordes, they show up to save our lives. Together, we bring down Dirk the Earthmaster and Gluck the Wind Reaver, Earth and Air, forcing Cho'gall to retreat.
Enjoy your hollow victory, insects! The darkness comes! May it console you as your world rots.
Ogres only understand strength, and we have humiliated Cho'gall right in front of them, so he will not be finding any followers here. A little ogre dance to celebrate, but the war against Cho'gall, Deathwing and the Old Gods, that would continue throughout the Cataclysm. A war fought out throughout the expansion, but in the case of Feralas, this is as far as the story in-game goes, but we do have information from the book The Traveler, in which we get a small glimpse of what is going on in the area after Mr. Pandaria. Apparently, the ogres still have quite a strong hold on the land, and their King Gordok is hosting fights within Dire Maul. You might wonder how that's possible, since the Horde had already killed King Gordok, but that appears to be more of a title amongst the ogres, rather than an actual name. Even the classic King Gordok was once known as Uruk, and this new one, he's quite fond of enslaving and having people fight for him. In the tale, the king is eventually slain, and it's the human Malice that takes over, receiving the title Gordok. Malice then sends out the ogres to track the heroes of her story. The entirety of Dire Maul, each and every hut and stone dwelling, each and every ogre, male, female, ancient and child, all of them are sent out into the wilderness to track down his prey. Through the rainforest of Feralas, the flooded canyon of Thousand Needles, and the simmering desert of Tanaris, their search leads to quite a bit of deforestation in the land, which then drives the feral Scar Yetis and the Woodpaw Gnolls further east into conflict with each other. Thankfully, they are able to put that aside and ally to fight against the ogres, whereas the story then takes us out of Feralas and the Traveler continues its travels. I'll definitely have to make some time to summarize Traveler in more detail. There are 2 parts of it out now. I still need to read the full version of 2, but that's for another day. Last thing I want to mention about Feralas is the micro-holiday that takes place in the zone, the hatching of the hippogryphs. Today is the day that the Freyfeather hippogryphs hatch. Head to Freyfeather Highlands in Feralas to witness the spectacle firsthand. Once you get there, you will see many nests with eggs inside of them. Go to one of these nests and get close to an egg. Sit on it, wait about a minute, and you will have hatched an egg of your very own. It's not a pet or a toy you can obtain, since it is a micro-holiday after all. You'll just have a cute little hippogryph hanging out on your shoulder, which lasts for about a day. A spectral feather that drops from the rare Lorfelium, ancient matriarch of the Freyfeather hippogryphs, that will extend the duration of the buff to 5 days. Just a little cute thing to do in between. But ladies and gentlemen, with that, I think I've been going on for long enough. This is the major story of Feralas. There are a couple of smaller questline and stories, like taking care of the harpies, taking essences to create the Eggs of Akkad, or to create weapons, sending the robot chicken back to Booty Bay, or the very old specific leatherworking trainer, but the major things of the story, they have been covered. As always, I'll leave it up to you to decide where we'll travel next, so by all means, let me know which zone you'd like me to cover next in the comments down below. Subscribe if you like my videos, leave a like if you enjoyed this one, and until next time guys, see ya!